Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So my name's Katie and today we are doing another recent reads. So these are just all the books, mostly what I read in July, but there's a few of the early August books as well. I have some very exciting books in this video, some new favourite series and favourite series finishers that I'm very excited to talk about, and also a couple of disappointments as well, so there might be some ranting. So let's just get started. So the first book I read was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which I absolutely loved. I gave this one 5 stars. And this one is like a I would say it fits with the like cozy fantasy genre. It's quite reminiscent of House by the Cerulean Sea if you like that, so I would definitely recommend checking it out. And I probably enjoyed it more than House by the Cerulean Sea. So basically we're following this character called Mika Moon, who is a witch, and there's not many witches in England and they have to like keep themselves secret. And then they're part of this like society, and they're not allowed to like interact with other witches ever, so they like have to keep, except from like once a year where they all meet up, so they have to keep themselves separate. But Mika gets hired by this like mysterious house to come and be a governess, and when she gets there it's like to be governess to these 3 young witches who are like living together, which is like a big no-no in the witch world. And also they like have never been like trained in their powers or anything, so that's why Mika's there. And then she basically like comes, having never really had a proper home before because she moves around a lot, she comes to live in this house and bonds with like the children who she's training and then the other inhabitants of the house. So there's like this grumpy librarian called Jamie, and then this older couple called Ken and Ian who are like kind of semi in charge. No, they're not really in charge, they just all sort of live together. And then there's this housekeeper who I think is called like Lucy, or maybe a different name, I can't really remember her name. And then basically they have to train the witches in time for this like lawyer who's coming to the house, in order to like not reveal themselves. So it's fairly like low stakes, but it's just a really good book and really like cozy vibes. I love the writing, I love Mika as a character and her like finding her place in her home, and like I love the 3 young witches, they were all such like strong personalities, and like Mika and Jamie's relationship and just everyone in the house and the like family vibes and all the little hints of magic I really liked as well. It was all just so good, so I'd really highly recommend that one. And then another new absolute favourite series of mine. So I think I read Wolf Song in a different, or wrapped up Wolf Song in a different wrap up, but the Green Creek series by TJ Klune. So the books I read, I literally read them one after another on audio because I love them so much. I would really recommend the audiobooks, they were so good. So Raven Song, Heart Song and Brother Song. And it's basically following this like werewolf pack in like Oregon in America who are just all really gay. And it's just, I'm really codependent and like I just love them all so much. It's like there's this family of werewolves, but then there's like various other characters who are like almost part of the pack as well. And yeah, I just really love them. So Raven's Song follows the like pack witch called Gordo, and then like the one of the like the uncle of, there's like 3 main brothers in the pack I would say, and then Mark is the uncle of them. So that's Raven's Song, and they sort of have a bit of a like, Gordo and Mark were like best friends in childhood, but then Mark and the other family had to move away, and Gordo is very resentful of this, and so now they sort of semi-hate each other, but they have to like work together. So it's kind of a second chance romance I would say, but it's not like, the romances are a big part of the series, but it's like that's not why I love the series. I just love all the like werewolves and the family, and like the like series conflicts are really good, especially actually Raven Song, the book I'm talking about now. The like religious what's the word, have really strong religious beliefs, and they cause you to do really bad things, and like they're kind of further, I think is what I'm looking for. So there's these hunters who like use the kind of Bible and like God as almost an excuse to hunt the werewolves, but it made me so angry sometimes like what they would be saying, and but yeah, anyway. And then Heart Song was probably my favourite of the series because I loved, so the main character Robbie is just this like cinnamon roll and a himbo, and he's just great. I love him. And in this book he like forgets all his memories of like the werewolf pack, and I just like love that trope. It was so angsty and so good. And like his love interest Kelly I love him as well. He's just a total sweetheart. And this book I really liked as well because Kelly is ace, and I like seeing that, like, and how that played a big part in the relationship, and I don't know, I like that, and the whole amnesia thing. And I just love Robbie. Robbie's probably my favourite character in the whole series. And then the last one is Brother Song, which follows Carter. So Carter, Kelly and Joe are like the three brothers, and Joe's book is the first one, Wolf Song, but that's not in this wrap up. Yeah, so this one follows Carter, who yeah, I don't know, I can't really explain the plot because it would spoil other stuff. Then his love interest called Gavin is like this. So I love him so much. He's so funny. He's spent basically a lot of his life as a wolf, so he sort of he's not a very good human, essentially. And he's so funny, and he's so sweet and precious, and you just want to wrap him in a little blanket. But yeah, so I just really love the series. I'd highly recommend. Just if you want a like found family, and like if you like werewolves. I feel like I'm on a real werewolf and vampire kick recently. I would just highly recommend that series. Okay, then we have The Oleander Sword by Tasha Suri. Oh, I forgot to give ratings. So I gave Raven Song 4.5 stars, and then Heart Song and Brother Song 5 stars. Okay, then we have The Oleander Sword by Tasha Suri, which I gave like 3.75 stars. And this one I feel like is it's the sequel to The Jasmine Throne, and I feel like I had very similar thoughts on this one to The Jasmine Throne, in that I really, really like the magic, and the like naturey magic is so cool. But the main like relationship is a bit of a disappointment. And it's a sapphic relationship as well, which is so frustrating. But there's just no reason for them to be together, like, and it just doesn't make any sense. Like, there's a really and I know the author can write good romances, because there's like her other series are really good romances, and also there's this very minor side relationship which I was so much more invested in, just purely because you could like see why they liked each other. Whereas like Melanie and Freya, I just didn't get it. Like, I don't know, and it's really frustrating because like the kind of romantic scenes are written well, but like just because you don't feel the connection, it just doesn't work. And I like Melanie and Priya as individual characters, but I don't know. And then this book I think I didn't like quite as much as The Jasmine Throne, because this one was a lot more sort of war focused, whereas The Jasmine Throne is more like temple religious stuff going on. And like my favourite part of The Oleander Sword is definitely there's like a side plot with Bakima, who is at the temple, and like all the stuff going on at the temple was really interesting. And I love the like thing where like old immortals come to make mischief, and they kind of reminded me a bit of the Ifrit from David Bell's series, which I love them. I know they're the bad guys, but and I thought, oh dear, ooh. And I thought it's probably not the best time when my favourite characters in the book were the like evil ones. But you know, oh, let's twist around it a little bit more. There we go. No, it doesn't want to stay. Okay. But yeah, and then there was like, at the end there was like this big emotional moment that was meant to be really impactful, but I feel like it just wasn't, because I hadn't seen the like, I don't know, anyway. But I would still recommend the series, and it's, okay, if it moves again I'll just leave it. But I still recommend the series, and like the writing is so like beautiful and kind of relaxing to read. There were just parts of the story that I didn't love so much, but I feel like I've been quite negative, but I did still really enjoy it. It's just like little things that annoyed me about it that makes it not a favourite, if that makes sense. Okay, then we have Out of the Blue by Jason June, which is a sort of YA, like semi-contemporary, semi-like fantasy. Like contemporary fantasy is a good way of describing it. And I really enjoyed this one because it was on mermaid, and I love mermaids, and I feel like I never really see them. I feel like most of the mermaid books I've read are like very like creepy mermaids, which I do love, but this one was very like wholesome mermaids, and it reminds me a lot of this film that I watched when I was little. I think it was called Aquamarine maybe. And so yeah, so this one we're following this merfolk called Crest, who comes onto land to like complete their journey, which basically means they have to go onto land for a month and like help a human out, and then they can like come back to the ocean. So Crest goes onto land and they meet Sean, who's this human who's just been dumped by his ex, and then Crest comes up with a scheme to try and help Sean get his ex back by like agreeing to fake date. So that's basically the story, and it's very like wholesome and cute, and I liked all the sort of body positivity and also the like sex positivity. I thought they were really great. It's very it's very clearly a YA contemporary, but, and having said in previous videos that I hate YA contemporary, I actually did really enjoy this. I feel like queer YA contemporary I do love, because there's a few sapphic ones which actually are some of my favourite books, so maybe I don't hate it completely. But yeah, this one was really good, would highly recommend, and it's just perfect like if you just want like a cozy good time, then would recommend. I think I gave this one like 4 stars. Yeah. Okay, then we had 10,000 Stitches by Olivia Atwater, and this is in the like Regency fairy tales series, which I really enjoyed this whole series. I gave this one 4 stars, and this was maybe my favourite of the series. It's because it's sort of a twist on Cinderella, and I really liked the sort of messages and stuff. So we're following Effie, who's this servant in this like fancy household, and she like convinces herself that she's in love with the one of the like, I think one of the heirs, like one of the children, like one of the men of the like household basically, and so in order to like make herself into a lady, she gets the help of this like fairy lord called Lord Blackthorn to make her like into a lady, and in exchange Lord Blackthorn wants her to like stitch, for every minute she spends as a lady she has to put a stitch in his jacket or something. So that's the premise. So it's kind of like a blend of like Cinderella and My Fair Lady, and there's another thing that made me think that I felt like it was comp to, but I couldn't think of it off the top of my head. But it was really good, and I really liked how Effie like becomes this lady, but Lord Blackthorn, her like fairy godfather or whatever, is really incompetent, and he's so funny, and he's such a sweetheart. I love him. But then Effie and Lord Blackthorn sort of grow closer as the novel goes on, and Effie realizes like she had a sort of very superficial idea of love, and then she almost realizes that instead of like when she's a lady, she realizes sort of how much value servants have and how she has like so much worth as a servant, and then she starts this like servant uprising. It's just really good. I really like the messages and the sort of classism and the exploration of that in Victorian society, and yeah, so I would just really highly recommend that whole series. It's very like cozy Regency romance, but also you get the fairies, which are cool, and just some really interesting like themes around sort of some of the more aspects of like Victorian era that you don't always see. Like the other books as well deal a lot with the like workhouse orphans who are just kind of forgotten most of the time by society, so I'd really highly recommend the series. Okay, and then we have Hang the Moon by Alexandra Bellfleur, which I gave 4 stars, and I really enjoyed this one. 4.25 stars. So I hadn't actually read this one because I love the series, but I've only read books 1 and 3 because they were the sapphic ones, and this one's MF. So I kind of put off reading this one. Well, I didn't deliberately put it off, but it just wasn't like a burning passion to read. But I really enjoyed it. I really liked Annie as a character. I really love Brendan as well, who's the love interest. He's so like, he's such a little sweetheart and like a cinnamon roll and very romantic at heart. And I feel like I always love when like men in romance books are like very sort of romantic and like I feel like in what's it called? Taking Danny Brown, Sophia's like super into romance and stuff, and I don't know, I just really like that. So I really like that in this one. And they basically like recreate all these like rom-com dates. Yeah, so I enjoyed it. I don't think I liked it quite as much as the other two, but I especially like Count Your Lucky Stars is definitely my favourite in this series. But it was a really good like romance read, so yeah. This whole series, and I feel like all her books just have this really like, there's a quote on the cover as well, it's like a really like twinkly feeling, and they're like so cozy and joyful and just, yeah, very pleasant to read. I don't know how to explain that, but they're just so kind of joyous. I don't know. So yeah, would highly recommend this whole series. Okay, then I read A Far Wilder Magic by Alison Saft, which I really enjoyed this one. I feel like I enjoyed this one more than I was expecting to. So I gave this one 4.5 stars. And this one we're following this character called Maggie, who like lives in this manor house, and she's sort of been abandoned by her mother, who's a famous alchemist. And so she's just trying to like work really hard to make ends meet. And then this magical creature called the Haller, which is like a magical fox, basically shows up. The whole town goes a bit mad and like starts this big hunt to try and get this fox. And Maggie, I can't remember exactly why she decides to enter the hunt, but she wants to enter the hunt. And then there's this other character called Wes, who is or wants to be an alchemist, but he's a bit down on his luck, and he's from quite a poor family. And he keeps being rejected by all these like alchemist guilds, so he goes to this like town in the middle of nowhere to try and be an apprentice to Maggie's mum character, but he gets to the manor and there's only Maggie there. And then Wes kind of persuades Maggie to like let him, I don't even know exactly what, but then they end up like cohabiting the manor and entering the competition for the hunt together, and like growing closer. And I really liked the romance in this, and I also really liked Wes as a character. He's so great. He's such a little disaster, but I loved him. And I feel like this just reminded me of some older YA books that I used to read, and I couldn't even tell. I feel like it was just, I don't even know if it was genuinely a book I used to read or if it was just like the nostalgic feeling. But I really enjoyed it, and like I wouldn't say this was very plot heavy. Like the actual hunt doesn't even take place till like the very last bit of the book, but it's just more about Maggie and Wes and their sort of journey as characters. And like that's my favourite type of book, like character focused books, and like I love both their journeys individually as characters and their relationship as well, and just everything I thought was really interesting. And like the setting was really cool. It took me a while to work out what sort of era this book was set in, but I feel like it's around sort of 1920s type. I mean, it's a fantasy world, but like because like I thought it was like really old fashioned, but then they had cars and telephones, so then I was confused. But so yeah, so I would recommend this one. That's all I have to say about that. Okay. Then we have Juniper and Thorn, which I gave 2.5 stars to. So this one was a little bit of a disappointment, which I was kind of sad about because I was really looking forward to it. But I just feel like there wasn't enough. Like, so the story has excellent like atmosphere and vibes. Like it's very sort of grim fairy tales and that kind of like dark, atmospheric fairy tale type thing. But it just had no like characters or plot or like heart to the story to hold it together. And I think I read a review that was like the author had read The Juniper Tree, which is what it's a retelling of, like got on the bare bones of the story and then the bits she wanted and then just not put it back together as a story, and that is kind of what it felt like. But yeah, also the main character Marlin Chen was so annoying. I hated her so much. She was so like kind of meek and pathetic, but like not in a endearing way, in like a really annoying way. And like she was so sort of down on herself, but then she would also, I don't know, like constantly calling herself ugly and like things, but just then would be surprised that like, I don't know, and like other characters would constantly describe her as like kind-hearted, but absolutely where was that? Like she was not kind once in this book. And so it just felt like the characterization was a bit off. And then like she would, I don't know, I just really didn't like her. And like her two sisters were really interesting. They were probably like the best characters in the book, but they were kind of minor characters. Like she was so selfish the whole book, and I don't know, it was very strange. So the main character Marlin Chen is like trapped in this abusive household with her, so her father's like abusive, and then she has her two sisters. And then she keeps escaping to like go into the town to like visit the ballet, and she kind of captures the eye, or the dancer captures her eye called Savas, and then they kind of have a romance, which I didn't really get the romance that much. I sort of did get it in a way, because it was like they both experienced a lot of trauma, and then they had like seen themselves in someone else, so I kind of got with that. And I actually, having said that I only like the two sisters, I did really like Savas as an individual character. But I think it was just my hatred of Marlin Chen. And I like some of the like creepy like horror elements, but again, like the kind of vibes and atmosphere weren't enough to hold the book together, and it just almost felt, and maybe this is a bit mean, but it almost felt like reading someone else's therapy session. Like, that's the best way I can describe this. And I mean, if you like that kind of thing, then you would probably enjoy it. But I feel like I just have a slight hatred of psychiatry. Maybe that's my issues projecting onto this book, but anyway, which is a bit of an irony, but still. So yeah, and then I would also, if you're interested in reading this book, there's some very dark themes and trigger warnings, I would say. Kind of graphic on page, like sexual assault and like childhood sexual abuse and cannibalism, I think, at one point, and various other, like, there's a lot of dark things that go on, like body horror, but I feel like I'm immune to body horror. But also Malinched has this really weird fixation on like nipples, and like the amount of time the word nipple was in this book honestly was ridiculous. Like, and I mean, I don't know, anyway, but I guess in a way it makes sense, but yeah, I don't think it worked for me as a book. Eating disorders, I feel like a lot of the kind of sexual assault sort of triggers were, I thought, handled in a good way. Not in a good way, but like they were well explored. But the eating disorder really annoyed me because there was like no reason for it, and it was almost romanticized by the text, like, and I don't know if that was just the nature of the kind of fairy tale type telling of the story, but I just really didn't think that one was necessary. Yeah, the other bits I thought were like part of what the author wanted to express in the story, so they were kind of good. But yeah, that's that one. Then, on a much more positive note, we have Speaking Bones by Ken Liu, which is the final book in the Dandelion Dynasty series, and I love this one. It's huge. It took me quite a while to read because, well, basically, like, the first 200 pages took me a while to get through because I would just be reading like about 30 pages at a time and then kind of putting it down and reading something else. But then once I properly got into it, I like sped through the last 800 pages, and yeah, I love this one so much. It probably not my favourite in the series, just because this book I feel like was a lot of plot and not a lot of like character time, and that's my favourite thing, is like the character development and character time. But having said that, I love all the characters already, so I feel like when the final book in a series is a lot of plot, I don't mind so much. I feel like it's the same with the Chorus of Dragons series. The like final book in that is really plot heavy and not a lot of character time, but because you love all the characters already, like, it's fine. So yeah, and the last like bit of this book, maybe my favourite bit of the whole series. I just loved it. Like, it's so like epic is the only word I can describe it, and I feel like how everything ended up was just like a perfect ending for the series. And the last page, and also just the kind of messages and political and philosophical themes of this series are amazing. I love them so much. I love all the characters, and yeah, especially I feel like Farah, Gia and Thera are probably my faves. And this book had actually some of my favourite chapters in the whole series. Just like, not even, they were just sort of almost one-off. Ken Liu does a lot of like, a chapter will just like tell a story almost of another character that's like not hugely relevant to the main plot. It's just a bit meandering. But some of those chapters I really loved. There were so many good like quotes. And there's I feel like this book could maybe have been edited down slightly, but also I just loved everything, so I don't know. And I really liked how Ken Liu writes conflicts and like battles. And there's like a few different battles in this book, but they're all written really well. They're all kind of written the same, but they're all like different, and so you never get bored of them. And the way they're written is like from a kind of a sweeping omniscient point of view, which I really like. And like all he does is throughout the whole series as well. The battle scenes, like there'll be a strategy that's like revealed, that's kind of been kept secret from like the reader, and it's like, oh cool, and then you get the chapter like explaining how they got to that point. I don't know if that's making any sense, but and I just really like that, like it keeps them sort of exciting. And then just the different ways of the like conflict resolution throughout the different conflicts I just really liked. So like it's not just battle after battle, and then all the like politics was so good. I feel like some of the stuff that happened was kind of predictable, but like not in a way that made it less enjoyment, just made it like more enjoyment. I don't know. And then yeah, I already talked about all the characters that I love especially Farah and Kinry. I feel like you get more of them in the Veiled Throne, but they're sort of, I feel like they have such Lion King 2 vibes. And at one point in this book, I really thought there was going to be a scene where they like, you know, like in the actual Lion King 2, and Kiara and Kovu like jump in between Simba and Zira and like stop the fighting. I genuinely thought there was going to be a scene like that. But yeah, it's just such a good series. I would highly recommend. And even like certain characters, like the way their story ended up wasn't how you thought it would end up, but it just fits so well. So would really highly recommend this series. I feel like I don't know if there's anything else I have to say that's not like super spoilery or like screaming at certain events. Okay, then we have The Martyr by Anthony Ryan, which I gave kind of 2.75, 3 stars. And this book I feel like I really liked the first book in the series, which is The Pariah. But this one just wasn't as interesting to me, because I feel like Alwyn, who I'd really liked in book 1, who's kind of like cheeky and charming, I feel like his character just wasn't that in this book. Like he was just a boring like fantasy dude thrown out. And then also a lot of the book was just like battles, and like there's like, so they get like, so at the end of, so in book 1, Alwyn kind of joins this like religious figure called Everdeen, who's like this martyr, and so he's kind of in her like band, and then the band are sort of in this book getting sent to like battles to try and help with the battles. So this book was just a lot of like battles and kind of boring. And yeah, like Alwyn wasn't as interesting. In the first book, it's almost like a bit Robin Hood-y, like the first part of the book takes place in like a forest, and then they get sent to these like mines, and then there's a religious, and that was already interesting, but I feel like they just lost it a bit in book 2 and just became almost like a sort of military, but not even interesting military, just like battle-y fantasy, which I didn't really like that much. And I feel like there was still a few like interesting religious themes, but they just weren't as interesting as book 1, and like not as, yeah, it just was kind of the same thing. So I don't know how I felt about that one really. But like Anthony Ryan's writing is really good, so I like read the whole book because like it was compelling to keep reading, but then I just didn't really like it nearly as much as book 1. So that's that one. Then we have In the Event of Love by Courtney Kay, which is a sapphic Christmas rom-com. Don't ask me what I was reading, a Christmas book in August. But it was on NetGalley, so I saw loads of Christmas romances on NetGalley, so then I was kind of in the mood. I enjoyed this one. I gave it 3.5 stars. Like it was really fun and really cheesy, and I feel like it's the kind of thing that like we need, that those kind of books like in queer form. So I enjoyed that, and actually the sex scenes were really good. But the only thing that kept me from like absolutely loving it was I didn't really like the main character, Morgan. She's very like she's kind of selfish, and like she sort of left her whole town when she was like younger, but then she blames everyone in the town for like things that I felt like were her fault. And she like doesn't take much responsibility, but after a while she sort of mellows out and maybe learns a few lessons. So I like that, and I like the romance. I like the like small town Christmas village vibes. I like the whole like Lumberjane, the love interest. She was great. So yeah, it's not a groundbreaking novel, nor is it like the peak of literature, but if you just want like a fun Christmassy romance, then I thought it was good. Yeah, that's all I really have to say about it. Then I read The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling, which I really enjoyed. It's like, I gave it 4 stars. It's like a gothic book. I wouldn't really call it horror exactly. like a gothic sort of mystery maybe. So they were following this character called Jane who gets herself like into this marriage deal with this other character called Augustine, who's like the town doctor, and then Augustine seems like really sort of like a perfect person basically, but then Jane and him, after they get married, they go to his like manor house, and then weird things start happening, and there's like a ghost, and various secrets are getting revealed. So yeah, that's basically the story. I really like Jane as a character. She's very like I would say kind of almost Austen protagonist-esque. Like she's kind of quiet and serious, but like or maybe not Austen actually, because her protagonists tend to be quite like feisty, but she had a lot of inner like strength, and I don't know, anyway. And I really liked all the medicine-y bits in this book. I was not expecting that at all, but that's quite a big part of the story, and I really liked that. And like all the like kind of themes of when you're a doctor and like the patients that like haunt you. I don't know, I just really enjoyed that. And then I like the sort of creepy, I always love a good like creepy manor house, and it sort of reminded me a little bit of Haunting of Hill House, which I really liked. The only bit that I feel like I didn't like of the story was like towards the very end. It sort of got a bit meta, and I don't think I really fully followed along on what was happening. But I feel like the story that far I'd really enjoyed, so like I just sort of rolled with the ending. But yeah, and I thought this sort of, it's not like the spookiest or creepiest book I've ever read, but kind of the build-up of tension and like the sort of questioning, like, is it actually haunted? Is it me? Am I going mad? Type vibes were really good. So yeah, that's that one. And then also I reread Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall, which I will probably talk about in my next wrap up actually, because I reread that in anticipation of starting the second book called Husband Material, so I'll talk about that in the next wrap up. But yeah, so that is everything for this wrap up. So I hope you all enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments what book you've read recently. I'd really love to know. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I hope everyone's having a really great day, and I will see you next time.